How's it going, everybody? In this video, we're going to be talking about the legalities of brass knuckles. So real quick, before we jump to this video, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, and that is USCCA. USCCA provides carry insurance for law-abiding citizens like me and you. If you're considering carrying some sort of firearm or other type of weapon to defend yourself, I highly recommend you look into carry insurance. And so I'll go ahead and pin a comment down below and put a link to USCCA in the details. So I get asked quite often whether brass knuckles are legal or what are the laws surrounding brass knuckles. So in this video, I'm going to address that specific question. So first and foremost, I want to address the federal level. So at a federal level, is there a law on the books which prohibits the possession, importation, use, stuff like that of brass knuckles? Is there a federal umbrella law that covers them? And the quick answer to that is no. There is no federal law that prohibits, the possession, importation, anything like that of brass knuckles. So along with that, since there is no federal prohibition on the possession, importation, etc. of brass knuckles, the question of whether you can legally possess, carry, use, import brass knuckles comes down to your state law. So in this video, I'm going to discuss specifically California law with some deviations talking about some other states. But if you have a question about your specific state, I highly recommend you go to your penal code. And that is usually where you will find the language addressing brass knuckles for your state. Specifically, when you look at the penal code, you want to look for prohibited weapons. So generally, people conceive the definition or what a brass knuckle is some sort of metal object that you put over your hand that protects your knuckles, and it's supposed to help increase the force of damage of when you punch someone, or it's supposed to also kind of protect your hand in the process. So that is what people generally conceive as brass knuckles. But California has their specific definition of what brass knuckles are. And so if you're looking for the definition of what California perceives as brass knuckles, you can look at California Penal Code 16920. And so what this section says is, as used in this part, metal knuckles means any device or instrument made wholly or partially of metal that is worn for the purposes of offense or defense in or on the hand, and that either protects the wearer's hand while striking a blow or increases the force of impact from the blow or injury to the individual receiving the blow. The metal contained in the device may help support the hand or fist, provide a shield to protect it, or consist of projections or studs which would contact the individual receiving the blow. And so really the definition is very typical of what you would conceive of as brass knuckles or metal knuckles. And so a lot of you probably are wondering, okay, well, that's the definition of brass knuckles. Am I allowed to have brass knuckles in the state of California? And if you just want the quick answer is no. You cannot possess, import, carry brass knuckles here in the state of California. And for the prohibition of the possession, importation, or use, carry, etc. of brass knuckles, you have to look at California Penal Code section 21810. And so this California statute makes it a crime for a person to make, import, sell, give, or possess metal knuckles or brass knuckles. Essentially, this section and the penalty that is attached to this specific penal code is what's considered a wobbler, which means that it could be charged as a misdemeanor with specific misdemeanor penalties attached to it, or it can be charged as a felony. If charged as a misdemeanor, if you are found to possess, imported, sale, manufacture, whatever it is, metal knuckles or brass knuckles, it can be charged as a misdemeanor, and that crime is punishable with imprisonment in county jail up to 1 year and or a maximum fine of $1,000. So that is if it is charged as a misdemeanor. Now it can also be charged as a felony. If it is charged as a felony, then it is punishable up to imprisonment in county jail up to 3 years and or a maximum fine of $10,000. So that is the penalty you're looking at being attached to the possession, importation, manufacture, sale of brass knuckles here in the state of California. So I'm sure a lot of you who are on this video are thinking about, well, I wanted to know if I could carry or possess brass knuckles. So I think it's important to look at what exactly possession is here in the state of California. And so there are two forms of possession here in the state of California. There is actual and constructive possession here. When we conceive of actual possession, this is something where you have immediate access to the item. So you would have immediate access to the brass knuckle, where constructive is that you don't actually have immediate access to it, but you do have control of that item, or you have the right to control that item, being that maybe you don't have it on your person, but you have it somewhere, you may be in your vehicle, in your bag, something like that, where it's not physically on you or you are actively possessing it, using it, but you have some sort of constructive possession of it. Both of these types of possession of brass knuckles here in the state of California are prohibited, so keep that in mind. Along with this, I want to address things like self-defense using brass knuckles, because some of you may think, well, I will carry brass knuckles as self-defense or an alternative form of self-defense, maybe because I can't get a firearm or a concealed carry license, maybe because you live in a very restrictive county here in the state of California. While many of you may think if you carried brass knuckles and used it in a lawful self-defense situation, you may not be on the hook, or maybe you use them in a self-defense situation, you may be found validated in that self-defense scenario, and maybe your use of those brass knuckles in the self-defense situation is found valid, but still you can be charged with the illegal possession of a prohibited item here in the state of California. So even though you were to use that item in a lawful self-defense situation, you are still in possession of a prohibited item, and you will likely be charged accordingly. And I would guess in a specific scenario like that, where if it was self-defense laden and maybe someone is injured, you are much more likely to be charged with a felony under that wobbler rule rather than the misdemeanor. I would assume that probably the district attorney would be very aggressive with you in that type of situation. So just keep that in mind. In contrast to California law, of course, there are other states that do not ban the possession or carry of things like brass knuckles or metal knuckles. For example, one of the more right-leaning and more red and conservative states of Texas actually passed HB 446 last year in 2019. And essentially what that did is it took brass knuckles off the prohibited weapons list in their penal code. Texas actually went in and removed them and actually made it lawful for individuals to possess and carry brass knuckles in that state. And so as you can see, it just varies state by state. Here in the state of California, as you would expect, it's very strict that no, it is a prohibited weapon, it is a prohibited item, and the possession, importation, manufacture, sell, etc. is prohibited, versus other states where they say pretty much you can have them and carry them. They don't care. So that's just a quick breakdown of the laws here in the state of California. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I will try to answer to the best of my ability. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to join the Patreon, and I'll put a link to the Patreon down in the details. And also another way to support the channel is using the various affiliate codes also found in the details. So as always, thanks you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.